I'm here after the webinar with one of our guest speakers, Leonardo Massai, and I would like to ask you, if you don't mind, a few more questions. My first question is, we went a long way from Paris 2015 up to now. So is the journey over, or still a long way to go to have a good climate regime?
Okay, yes. Well, if you ask a negotiator, of course, the journey is never over. But a very good step forward has been made in Krakow, in Katowice for COP24. Parties were before them a lot of tasks, a lot of discussion, a lot of negotiation, and key items to be resolved with a view to make the Paris Agreement operational. So in Katowice, parties were able to agree on many milestones, many of the operational rules of the Paris Agreement, and those include the guidance for the implementation of nationally determined contributions, the guidance for adaptation communication, the new rules for the transparency framework which has been established by the Paris Agreement, rules for the compliance mechanism which is also inscribed in the Paris Agreement, and also many other details of the operational rules. So this will allow the Paris Agreement to be implemented as of 2020. There are still some issues which have been unresolved. One of the major is about Article 6 of the Paris Agreement and the rules on the so-called market mechanisms, and other minor elements which are still need to be refined by the parties and by negotiators in the next years. But Katowice was really a good step forward, and it will make the Paris Agreement a reality and will allow parties to start implementation as of 2020.
You partly already answered my second question, I guess, but based on the outcome of the COP24, how strong is the regime foreseen under the Paris Agreement in your view?
The Paris Agreement itself is an international treaty which is defining the rules for the next regime in the next decades. And it already contains some hints of what is the enforcement force of the regime. The rules agreed and the decisions agreed in Katowice provide the details of that. In particular, there is a decision on the compliance committee which rules out the details of how this committee will function. The committee is by its nature non-punitive and facilitative, but still will have the power to investigate what parties are doing in terms of submission of their reporting documents to the Paris Agreement. It will also have the power to review some of the contents of those reports. There is also some guidance about accounting of NDCs, which will allow the parties to review what all parties are doing in terms of the objectives and the targets that they have inscribed in their NDCs. So there is a strong set of rules which of course will be implemented, will have to be implemented by parties correctly, but it will allow also some certain degree of control over what the parties are doing and whether the Paris Agreement objectives will be met or not.
One final question. Is the issue of differentiation finally resolved in your view?
The issue of differentiation is a key issue. It's a very important political issue. The Paris Agreement didn't fully resolve this issue, so a lot of expectations were put on the result of Katowice. With Katowice, we have now a 3 layers level of implementation in terms of differentiation. So there is not a clear division between developing and developed countries anymore. The Paris Agreement is applicable to all parties. But there is this 3-layer division of responsibility and a bindingness. So we have developed countries which have mandatory rules for transparency. We have LDCs and SEEDs which are given full flexibility in the implementation of transparency requirements. And then we have a set of, another set of parties which will be able to self-determine flexibility and providing details of their capacity and the capabilities to implement and to fulfill the transparency requirements, and therefore giving the chance also to emerging economies to improve their reporting skills and to improve their capability in order to fulfill the Paris Agreement requirements.
I see. So in a way we have enriched the agreement and maybe added some further complexity too, right?
Yes, exactly. We have added some further degree of details, which will allow the Paris Agreement to be implemented properly.
Okay. Thank you, Leonardo.
Thank you, Simone.